Hi you guys, I hope everyone's doing well. This is James from Divine Crochet. Welcome to my channel. For today's video, I thought I'd take you through the process of me both constructing and crocheting this distressed patchwork jumper. I know a lot of you guys enjoyed my distressed mesh crochet jumper, but that project is going to be quite hard for you guys who aren't super familiar with freehand crocheting. Even if you crocheted for a while, having to both freehand the stitches and the sizing of the jumper at the same time is going to be quite a big project. So for this jumper, you just have to be able to freehand the stitches. Also with this tutorial, you're more able to create a baggier jumper, which I really wanted to do as the weather's getting colder. And obviously I know this jumper isn't going to keep me warm, but having a baggier jumper makes it easier to layer with shirts and turtlenecks and things like that. For this jumper, I used double knit cotton yarn in these 3 colours, as well as a 5mm hook. As always with distressed stitches, you're just going to find it easier using a slightly bigger hook than you normally would. This just allows your material to stretch and be more malleable, is that the word? So the patches will be stretchy, so if there are mistakes when you start to construct your jumper, these mistakes will kind of stretch out to create a shape of jumper that you're happy with. Once you have your materials, you're ready to just go ahead and start your jumper. Our first step is we're going to start by making those distressed crochet patches. So you can freehand these however you would like. I'm just going to show you how I freehanded these panels. First I started with a slip knot and then I just decided to chain a length. For me this length would vary, but I would say probably between 4 and 8 before then doing a double or triple crochet into that first stitch. I start my panels like this so I have a circular shape for me to be able to work around. And you'll see within this tutorial, I'm not too strict with myself as to how I do these stitches. I just kind of fill in the gaps. So you can see here, I've chained one and I'm about to do, about to do a double crochet. And get into the habit whilst you're making these panels of just laying them down and looking at where you want to go next. So you can see, I'm going to create like a little bubble here because that's just kind of the way that my stitches are facing at the moment. And when you do your stitches, you don't have to fully complete them. So here I'm going to start a double crochet before I then go into like a messy Tunisian stitch before then pulling through all of the loops on my hook. Now for the stitches that I like to use a mix of chains, extended chains, triple and double crochets, as well as those messy Tunisian stitches. Using these stitches together helps vary the texture to add a lot more dimension to your panels. Now you can see here I'm laying down my project again and I want to connect this kind of empty spot that I have, so I'm just going to work some stitches to go back into the original circle that I worked with. But for me, I never have a plan when it comes to these patches. I just kind of follow where the material is naturally going, and that's why I always work on a flat surface when I freehand crochet, just so I can see what I'm doing. And whilst I don't mind crocheting into any point in the stitch, I still will make sure that my yarn isn't splitting to make sure my panels stay strong. One tip I can give you is just try not to be too methodic when it comes to freehanding. I think a lot of people struggle with freehanding because they try and think too much about it and try and make things work. But realistically, you build up your freehand skills by making mistakes and kind of figuring out how you can get around them. And like with any crochet stitch, the more you do it, the better it will look. So the first time you freehand a distressed stitch like this, you might not be 100% happy with it, but the more you give it a go and the more you realize what looks good on you and tips that help you as a crocheter, your crochet will definitely improve. Like, I want you to think back to the first time that you did single crochet, and I would be surprised if any of you tried single crochet for the first time and it looks like the single crochets that you're doing now. So just give it some time. As I say, make sure you're laying down your projects every so often just to check that everything's flat, and you should be good. So you can see here I've started to build up my fabric a little bit more and it's kind of not looking great. So what I would do if this happens, so it's kind of starting to pucker a little bit, the sides are starting to roll, what I would do
is I would just frog it up to the point that it was when it was flat. So right here I can see it's flat, and I can see I just didn't add enough stitches in between where I was trying to go. So I'm going to try the same sort of thing, but this time instead of doing a double crochet, I'll do a triple and add a lot more chains to kind of add a lot more length there, and that should fix my problem. But yet again, what I would do is once I've finished this sort of area, I'd lay it down to kind of check how things are going, and I can see that already this looks a lot better, so I can go ahead and close up this side. If you guys want more information on distress stitches, I do have a tutorial just based on how to distress crochet, so I would go check that out and then come back to this tutorial. But as I said earlier, a lot of it is just going to be trial and error. But we're just going to carry on adding stitches till we're happy with the total size. This is very much a follow your heart's desires, what will be, blah blah blah, just very much all of that. So you just want to finish the panel when you're just happy with how it looks. And don't worry about the shape or size, just leave a really long end. For me, I left between maybe 2.5 meters, maybe 3, I don't know, it's not super important, but for this step I would rather have too much of an end than not enough, and you'll see why later. Also, if you are finding working in a round quite hard, you could work this up like you would a normal panel, where you start with a long chain length and work from side to side as you would kind of any other stitch. But whatever you do, I would just vary the shape and size of your panels.
Once we have a bunch of patches, we're ready to start kind of crocheting and sewing them together to create bigger patches.
You first want to get a few patches and kind of piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle. You can see here these two pieces go quite nicely together, so I'm going to start attaching them. This is why we left our long end earlier, so we can use this to crochet our panels together. Remember, this doesn't necessarily have to be perfect because we did use a bigger hook size, so there should be some give to the panels. But your goal here is basically we want to do a mix of chain stitches, slip stitches and single crochets to attach the two panels. So I'll put my hook through a loop in each panel, so I tend to do 1 or 2 loops just to keep it not too bulky, before then either completing a single crochet or a slip stitch. And you can also chain a length and then move up your two panels that exact same length and then continue with your slip stitches or single crochet. I would specifically use these chain stitches in areas where your panels don't meet as nicely, so this will just make the final project look a lot nicer than if you were to single crochet this point together. But honestly, just do your best with this. This is a distress project, so really how you attach these panels isn't too deep. As you can see, I have this blank spot here that you can either keep plain just to add to the tattered final effect, or what I'm going to do with this red thread is I'm just going to go ahead and do a few extra distress stitches. I just have a little bit more length left to my end, so I thought I might as well put it to good use rather than just cutting it and using it for stuffing later on. I decided that I wanted to fully fill this gap, and I was going to end off all my stitches with a triple crochet to create a little bit more of a smooth end. This is completely up to you though, because you don't really need more than a few smooth ends, which I'll talk about later, but right now you just want to focus on fitting everything together the best that you can. When it comes to the long end of your other panel, I'm just going to go ahead and add a row of single crochets and chain stitches on top of a different colour. This is just going to add to the texture and make it look a little bit less like a bunch of patches of different colours, if that makes sense. So this is one way that I'm going to integrate the colours together and make it look a little bit more interesting. But from now on, you just want to carry on what you've been doing. So for me here, I'm going to close this gap at the top here, because if you can see like an inch down, the rest of my fabric kind of goes well together. So I'll basically chain till that point. And then once I get there, I'm going to pinch where I want to start connecting my panels. And then for this point, I'm just going to do a bunch of slip stitches and single crochets just to attach this panel. And just as we did before, any leftover yarn we have, I'm just going to go ahead and add a few more distressed stitches on top of a different colour. So I'm actually just going to follow where I went with that dark grey colour. As I say, this is just to add a little bit more texture than it just looking like patches that have been attached together. But basically from here, we're just going to continue adding our smaller panels to this bigger panel. Don't worry about big blank areas like this. You can just go ahead and leave them bare and it will add to the final effect of the distressed material.
You want to carry on this process building up 4 panels, which is later going to be 2 arm panels and a front and back panel.
Now our goal is to be able to have 4 panels that we can lay out to look like this. And I would only worry about your straight lines at the point shown, but basically you just kind of want to fit together things as best you can. So for me, I tried to put the arm panels on the side that made the most sense for how they're laying.
We're then going to go ahead and do our best to attach all these panels together.
We'll start by attaching the front and back panel either side of the collar before then attaching the arms. So we're going to use the same technique that we used to attach the panels together. You can see here that I'm stretching out my panels as I go to make sure that I'm not bunching anything together. Also at this point in the video I was oiling my hair. The top of my head does not normally look like that. That would be crazy. But anyway, you just want to continue attaching up until your project looks something like this once you fold it in half, and this is the point that you can kind of drape it over yourself by putting your head through the hole in the middle and checking that the sizing looks alright. If any part of your project needed to be a bit bigger, you could go ahead and either add more stitches or add more panels, but for me I was happy with the way that it was going, so I just went ahead and attached the rest of my jumper, which is just either side of the body as well as the sleeves, and obviously we're using the same technique that we were using earlier.
And once you're happy with how your jumper is fitting, your jumper is done. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I really enjoyed the finish of this jumper. As I say, you're able to make this jumper a lot baggier than you are with that mesh jumper, making it perfect for colder months where you do want to layer. This jumper is super cute with just a turtleneck or a shirt underneath. I'm definitely going to get a lot of wear out of this in the winter. This jumper is just a really cute layering piece, and because I made it out of cotton, in the summer it's going to be perfect. Can't wait to see your guys' creations. Please make sure you like, comment and subscribe. I'm going to leave my social media links down below, as well as my Etsy store if you want to look into some of my patterns. Please have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.